That's a couple of the work kids or wrestlers getting off of work, going into the gym. Yeah.
Seems a little bit. There's a lot of work being done here.
Oh yeah.
like just.
This place is alive from 4:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, every night.
Really?
Yeah. And even then, there's still some people here at other hours a lot of time.
Really?
Yeah.
It is unique.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unique. So, what are we doing tonight? Tell me what we're doing tonight.
So tonight we have what we call our Big Game Wrestling Club banquet. It's our one time a year fundraiser, like our big one. We do some other little things throughout the year if we need something for some different unique situations or whatnot, but like tonight's the big one. So like the backstory behind it is my brother Tyler and one of my childhood best friends, Nate Moore, who we grew up wrestling with, wrestled at Iowa and Iowa City West and all that. We were at lunch one time and I told him, I'm like, yeah, I went, hunting with this guy who turns out to be our auctioneer now, Steve Crutchfeld, who's here that you just met. But we were hunting and I was telling him about my idea to do this fundraiser for the club to raise money so that we could pay for kids to do different things. We could build this facility, travel, do all of it without like having the stress of making it a business. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't want to charge like just specifically to make kids good to survive like that, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so like we were sitting at lunch one day and those guys kind of laughed at me and were like, you really think people are going to come and like spend money like it's a college, it's a kids wrestling club? And I'm like, yeah, but I think, through our family's business and the connections that we have in our community, I'm like, we're good. We'll make it happen. And they're like, oh, well, we'll see. And like, maybe 2 weeks later we went to lunch and I told those guys, hey, I booked Bella Sala, which is like the nicest event center around. And I'm like, I took like 20 grand of my own money and I'm like, I bought some stuff and had, like Steve donated, his time to do a mountain lion hunt and some other people out in Montana that I had connections with to do some Western hunts and whatnot that I knew that we could make some money. And that first year, I don't even know what we made. It wasn't much, but it was like enough to like buy a camper. Okay. Mm-hmm. And like, that was like, I'm like, if we get the camper, then we can travel places. And then we can host kids to stay at my house at our farm. And I can run this camp that we call Man Camp out of there. The kids can live there. They can train. We can work. I'll pay them. You know what I mean? It'll be like Rocky style, mm-hmm. type training, kind of like I grew up with Pablo Boston, Coach Gable doing that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, it'll work. And then the next year I was like, okay, well, we rented out half the room last year and it was like 150 people. I'm like, this year let's rent the whole place. And so I think that next year was like 500 and some people, and we've never looked back. This is like year 8 or 9 now where we sell it out.
There's going to be more than 500 people here?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You're glossing over a lot, I think.
Yeah. It's...
So what, okay. Let's talk about, where the money goes.
So the biggest thing is like, and this is where like I tell people all the time, like what we do is different than anybody else. I always put like, we have a t-shirt that says nobody period. And my whole goal is like when I started this, I was fortunate growing up in Iowa City and around elite level wrestling my entire life and amazing people and coaches and athletes and whatnot. But I always thought that there was, you can take something from everybody and do it differently than everybody else. And like, that was kind of my wrestling style myself. And it's kind of my personality and everything. So like, I want to do it different than everybody else. So nobody's going to do it like us, period. And so we have a t-shirt that says that, just says nobody, period. And like, that's what it's about. It's just like, nobody's going to do the same thing as us, period. Or like, we're going to try to be doing it different than somebody else. So my thoughts with that is that we take kids hunting all around the country. That kid sitting right there has been in New Mexico with me and killed an elk. Ethan's been all over hunting with me, going back to like Hunter and all those kids, taking those guys all over. So we pay for some of that stuff, the hunting trips, leases, things like that, to be able to afford that. Mm-hmm. We pay for a lot of kids to travel with us, so like I was lucky. My dad basically worked his ass off, and spent every dollar he made on taking me and my brothers and my sister to any wrestling tournament we wanted to go to growing up. And, we didn't know whether or not we were poor or had money or anything. We just knew how hard our dad worked to take us. And so for me, it's about like that no kid will have to worry. Like, you want to go to that tournament, it's not that you might not be good enough to go. You just say you want to go. And as long as you're working hard in the room upstairs, we'll pay for it. We'll take you no matter what. Singlets, gear, da-da-da. No kid in this room is going to have better gear than somebody else. Nobody's going to have the new cool sweatshirt that we come out with, and another kid's not going to have it. Like, that's where it goes to for the most part, And then it's like what I was telling you about, reinvesting in our facility here. You know what I mean? I've said that I don't want any kid to ever have an excuse of why they couldn't be successful. So to have the best mats, have the best weight equipment, have the best recovery. We have a nutritionist, we have a strength coach, we have doctors that we work with, a legitimate doctor, chiropractors, anything that these guys need, they have access to all of that. And like I said, if people don't have the means to it, we got you. You know what I mean? There's families, that they have 4 or 5 kids, and like, how do you make that work? With the cost of living is pretty high, these days, and so like, it's always trying to get to that point, is to make sure that everybody's comfortable, everybody's taken care of. That's
Okay, so that's where the money goes.
Yeah.
How do you make the money tonight?
So tonight, it's really an assortment of different things: raffles, auctions, games of chance, things like that. But there'll be a ton of guns. We now doing it so much, and with our connections through the hunting industry and different people, and then wrestling, and then supporters in our area that may or may not have vacation homes and different things like that in different places of the United States or even different countries. We exploit those opportunities by asking for help, and we have a big donor base for what most people kind of laugh. Again, it goes back to it's a kids wrestling club that basically has a donor base like a college wrestling program, and so we lean on that to sell vacations, art, memorabilia. We have kids that give us things, world team singlets, things like that
Sure.
mean something. There's things hanging up in the gym that people buy and they give it back to us because it's cool to see it hanging in the gym type thing. But yeah, and then we're just really lucky to have those people that are willing to help us by giving us so many different things. And then
So you're raffling off Western hunts.
Yeah.
You're raffling off vacations in
Yep.
somewhere.
Yep. So, there'll be like, and then like one thing, like this is like, so I went to a fundraiser a few weeks ago and put a few $100s into this raffle, and I won like $15,000 worth of Milwaukee tools.
Okay.
Well, like, I don't want it. I want it, but like selfishly, I know that the club can make money off of it. So I'm like, all right, well, that's one raffle. So you'll see that tonight. And then we added to it because, of course, I'm psycho. I'm like, that's not good enough, right? It filled up this entire room and everybody's impressed with it. So then I'm like, well, we got to add to it. Like, we can't just put what I won. So now it's probably closer to like 20 grand worth of Milwaukee stuff that one person's going to win tonight. We have a general auction, we have silent, we have live, gun raffles, different things like that, a women's raffle, and then a big apparel table and things like that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. How many people are going to be there tonight?
So there should be right around 500 tonight.
So you're talking 500 people. A lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Right? How do you do it? Like, meaning, it's not just you, right?
No. You have all the coaches here that work here, our wives. We have a couple gals that help us at the front desk here, that they're a big support. Obviously, to be honest with you, like, the support is out of all of our wives. Like,
yeah, sure.
That they all help us. And then the kids, like, you'll hear it tonight in the message from kids in the past, present kids, and kids that are graduating. Like, my big thing is wrestling is going to be over. For some of us, like, it ends quicker, and For some of us, it'll go longer, but no matter what, it's going to be over. And at that point, you know, I just hope that they become who we want them to be. And so, you know, we require these kids, not require, but expect them to help. So, I mean, they'll all be there working tonight. They all just got back from setting up at P&L, you know, today. And, you know, that's kind of the expectation too, is like if you benefit from this, there's no handouts. We all know that. There's no handouts in the world, or at least I hope our kids aren't getting handouts. I want them to earn whatever they get, you know, the same way like that we all had to. Like, it's okay if somebody helps you, but you should work for that too. And so, like, you know, that's a big thing that we preach to our kids is like, if you want the benefit of tonight, you need to be there. You need to help us sell raffle tickets. You need to help us set up, you know, those types of situations.
Sure. Yeah. I don't want to take up. We're cutting to time here.
We'll be fine too.
Okay. Last one then.
It's like 5 minutes drive to where we're going. So.
Okay. What would you tell a club owner in Mississippi? Right. I say Mississippi because they don't really have much wrestling.
Yeah.
What would you tell a club owner in Mississippi to start some small version of this?
I'll tell you this, that I did it in Montana. That's where this all started. It really started here when I was done with college with a couple buddies, and then we all kind of went our different ways after a couple months. So, like, being truthful about, like, it kind of, you know, that was kind of a summer type fling thing. And then when I went to Montana, you know, I started with 5 kids and a piece of mat that might have been, you know, 20 by 20 at most, you know. And then I met the Dagans, you know, and Jarrett and Sawyer were 2 of the kids I started working with to start with, and I got lucky. I got tied into a amazing group of people that helped me grow from there. But what I always knew is that, and then when I came back home here and I started with, you know, the Garvins, Volkers, and Nactborns, and all those kids that Avilas and all them that came through at that time, it was, if you do your job, everybody else will want to be here. And so, like, I always tell people, like, don't go try to get somebody else's kids. Don't try to go get a high school kid that you know is already good. Don't hang your hat on something that you didn't do. Take a kid that, you know, you've worked with for a long time, make them as good as they can be, and then your club will be successful. And then people will want to be there. You know, it's cliche to say, but, you know, I mean, if you build it, they'll come. We're in Iowa, and I'm saying that, right?
Yeah.
But, like, there's no real secret recipe to it. And then, like, I've always told people, like, what we do with our fundraiser, I'm happy to help people. I'll tell anybody the keys to success when it comes with it. I'll share contacts that I have with people to do it. If it's a fundraising thing, you know, that's easy. Lots of people have help with that. But I would tell people to go, like, if you aren't lucky enough to grow up in a family business like I am and learn from, you know, day one of some business sense, go to someone. Find a mentor in business that will help you, that will, you know, help mentor some of the decisions that you make. But starting out with a wrestling club, it cannot just be financial. I can tell you that.
Right.
Just in the state of Iowa alone, I could, you know, and I won't call the guys out, but I know that the most successful clubs here didn't start as businesses. All those guys, every guy that you could think of right off the top of your head that have clubs like ours, myself included, they didn't start as businesses. All those guys had jobs that they were working, and they were grinding as their club grew, as they were proving themselves. And, like, that's, like, for me, when people, like, it doesn't matter where you're at. You know what I mean? Like I said, I mean, I was in Montana, and, you know, wrestling's good in Montana, don't get me wrong, and, like, I love it. There's good, tough kids there. That's the biggest thing. But, you know, it's not the hub.
No.
You know, it's not Iowa City, Iowa.
Right.
And so, like, that was my thing was like, if I said, if I can be successful here, well, I'd better be able to be successful at home, right? And
Be
so
easier, sure.
I just
I mean, like,
pour into the first
it's
kids
in the
you
culture,
have. Yeah.
right? It's just in the culture.
Yeah.
It's a little different, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to. Mom may not wrestle, but Dad did.
Yeah.
And Granddad did.
And even then, if they're not, they're fans.
Right.
They know who, you know, every Iowa State UNI wrestler is. You know what I mean? Everybody does. It's just one of those things. You can't go to any corner of this state, any town, any place without everybody knowing who the most famous wrestlers are in the state of Iowa that have lived, and that's a unique thing. So that helps us, obviously. I mean, I'd be.
Why is it? I mean, I don't know if I could. Is it just history?
I think so. We had a group up from Tennessee the other night, and I got into this rant, about like the sweat on the mats. I'm like, that's why people come here. Like wrestling in the summer. Like you got 100 kids in a wrestling room. Like it's still important. It's still important for kids here during the summer to be in a wrestling room, to sweat together, to work hard, and it's like it.
That was the biggest word that would come up whenever I speak to Terry, when I speak to Schwab. It's important.
Yeah.
Like these things are important in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you that there's, without sharing too much of, my personal life or other people's, I can tell you that wrestling is a way to advance your life in Iowa. There's not too many places like that. Where else can you say that? That wrestling is a way to advance your life, your public image, your social setting, your opportunities in life. Like usually it's football, it's basketball, it's different things that are bigger in big cities and da-da-da. We don't have that. The other thing is like in Iowa, what's there to do in the winter? You know what I mean? We hunt, we fish, we wrestle, we dirt track race. Like that's the state of Iowa. And you farm. You know what I mean? Like that's where like it's important. It's important because socially it can mean something to you where in other places I don't know if it can. And I don't know, you've been all over and I've been a lot of places now, and I don't know how many places that exists where, like I said, wrestling can advance your life.
I could think of one or two.
Yeah, and that's where like growing up, like I remember thinking that. Like if I just do this, if I'm just a national champion for Iowa, if I'm just an Olympic champion, you know what I mean? Like everything will be okay, right? Life will be perfect. You never have to work again. I'll be the head coach at the University of Iowa or Iowa State or UNI or whatever it is. Like that's your thoughts. And maybe some of that's that I grew up in that with my dad and my brothers, but like, same thing. Like,
I don't think it's a totally unique thought in the state of Iowa. I think that is a very common thought.
Dude, I remember like one time my dad got us a karaoke machine and a strobe light, right? We were kids. Mm-hmm. But like that turned into like us announcing each other, running down the steps in the farmhouse we grew up to this little blue mat that we had, and we were acting like one guy it was always a coin flip with me and my brother of who got to be, the Hawkeyes or Iowa State or UNI that night, and if we were wrestling Oklahoma State or Minnesota, you know what I mean? All these different teams that, back then, like, that you were like cheering against, but at the same time, like my dad was always made sure that we were fans of the other schools and the best wrestlers. Yeah. So like we were always like, oh no, I get to be John Smith tonight, like, you know what I mean? Or, no, I'm Mark Perry tonight, that type of thing. Or, and then as you get older, that kind of stuff, fades away a little bit. But like those are the things that I remember about, and like what I tell our kids, even when we coach here is like, don't forget why you're doing this. And if you ever need a little extra motivation, one of the things I tell our kids all the time is remember that little boy. Remember that little girl that wanted to be where you're at. So like the days that it sucks and like you don't want to do it, like remember like that little boy or that little girl would have died to be where you're at right then, right? Like, and for us that should be a little extra motivation. And again, like I think that's like kind of culture in Iowa too with wrestling, right? Like people do understand when they get to a point, like there's a lot of good role models in wrestling at all the schools, whether it's Grandview with, Coach Mitchell and Reedy and Grant Henderson and all those guys, like, I mean, wow. Or the Wartburgs or Loris and, William Penn, with Jake Cadle and those guys, what they're doing down there with their women's program. I mean, there's just good wrestling everywhere. Yeah. And it's fun, it's just a great place to live, and it's competitive. So it constantly is pushing you to like stay ahead.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.